All right, no hard and fast rules when it comes to parenting.
It's not easy. Parenting styles can vary between children, and be clear that whatever path you choose will determine the outcome. So here to break down the pros and cons of the different parenting styles is clinical psychologist Dr. Jeff Gardere. So good morning, Dr. Jeff. Great to see you.
Dr.
Good morning,
Jeff,
Hazel. Good morning, John.
good morning. Let's talk about parenting styles. They evolve, of course, from generation to generation. When we were growing up, we, of course, didn't have technology that our children have these days. Do you think that makes it easier or harder right now for parents?
I do think it makes it a little bit tougher, and that kids are really more globally aware, number one. And number two, they do know that parents have different styles of parenting that they get from, they can get that information from the internet.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this from a personal level. Many people, especially children from immigrant families, they grew up in really strict, they had very strict authoritarian parents. So what are the pros and the cons of this type of parenting style?
Well, I grew up in one of those homes. I'm a Haitian American. My parents came from Haiti back in 1956. But we grew up with more of an authoritarian kind of parenting where they set the rules. They were very much into limiting some of that self-expression. But those were tougher times, and maybe that kind of parenting style was really needed. We were dealing with a lot of racism and discrimination in that time, as we still do today. But the bottom line was they needed to be a little bit tougher on us. And they used, and just outside of the Caribbean community, we know that they used some corporal punishment. Now we know corporal punishment is absolutely something that we don't want to use, and we need to be more progressive, more permissive in our parenting, because just as you said, Hazel, kids know more about the world. They know more about the different parenting styles that their parents should be looking at. And we don't want to limit them by really putting them into a box with that authoritarian style.
I mean, I had super strict parents, and I'm worried that that may cause me to overcorrect with my kids. So what do you think of it?
Yeah, that's right. A lot of our parenting comes from what we learned from our parents. But the important thing is that you can teach an old dog some new tricks, talking about me, Hazel, not you. And therefore, it is really important that we try to adapt our style to who our kids are. So what we want to see is more of an authoritative kind of parenting where there's more balance and respect. It combines the permissive parenting, which is a little bit more of the negligible rules, lenient approach, with something that's a little bit stricter, but to come up with the magic sauce, if you will, of something that is a balance of the two.
That's a great idea, Doctor. If you're a new parent, how do you strike that balance? How do you sort of realize what you got in your child and the personality? Any tips for trying to strike that perfect balance?
Well, I think a lot of that, John, is observation. Get to know who your child is. Your child will begin almost at birth. You will see the style of that child. And I would start with something that's a little bit more of the permissive parenting. But as the child gets older, then you may want to switch to something that has more of the balance and the respect. The thing about these three types of parenting, permissive, authoritarian, and authoritative, is that they need to change as the child gets older. So as we see a child earlier on, we may see more of that authoritarian because we want to guide them the right way. When they become teenagers, we really want more of that permissive parenting because the child needs to take more responsibility for their behaviors.
Yeah, they need to learn that independence. Right?
Yes.
Well, what is the one non-negotiable, though, that you think every parent should abide by when it comes to raising their kids?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. I mentioned it earlier. No corporal punishment and no wire hangers, as the old movie would say.
Okay, Mommy dearest.
Punishment, yep. Corporal punishment. Oh, and don't use those wire hangers, God forbid, as part of that corporal punishment. But my point is, that it is so important to understand that when we use corporal punishment on our children, then what we're really doing is limiting the development of their IQ and who they are as a person. We know that aggression and violence leads to more aggression and violence, especially in our children. So it is about having an interaction that is healthy, where we can listen to them, where they can listen to us, and it becomes more positive and interactive.
All right, well, Doctor, obviously the corporal punishment, I think almost everybody in this day and age agrees with that. What about classics like timeout? How do you feel about something like that?
Yeah, those things really do work, but here's the key. Even though we may think they're old and corny, giving your kid that timeout or, telling them, that they're going to get something taken away from them, the way that it really works is consistency.
Yeah.
As a parent, you have to be consistent in the timeouts, consistent in withdrawing certain things, and consistent in the rules of the house, even as you change the parenting styles. But there has to be an understanding as to what the basic rules of behavior happen to be, which is really about honesty and respecting others, and of course, loving themselves as children and loving your parents.
Yeah, and sometimes mommy and daddy need a timeout as well. Dr. Jeff Gardere, thanks so much for taking the time with us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. You're right about that, too, right?